The business of advocacy. What impact does lobbying Congress have on businesses and their profits in our democratic process?
We all try to urge one another to do things that we think they ought to do, or we'd like them to do, or we need them to do. That's, that's the human discourse.
Absolutely.
So that when you talk about lobbying, what that is people trying to convince those who have some authority to do something that affects them. Set the rules, pass a law, issue regulations, something that affects them or their businesses or their families. Lobbying has a very bad image.
Yeah.
And you know what I do? I go and meet with groups of people and I say, now I want you all to raise your hand if you're a husband. Raise your hand if you're a wife. Raise your hand if you were a child. Raise your hand if you were a parent. You're all lobbyists. And the Constitution said everybody had a constitutional right to redress their grievances with the Congress and with the government. So it is a fundamental central thesis of our democracy that those who are making decisions interface with those whom those decisions will affect. It becomes, I suppose, more vigorous in cases when it affects financial interests.
Yeah.
That's when all of it becomes who gains, who loses, what does the congressman get out of it if he votes for this, that, and the other? And the interest could be getting a campaign contribution, the interest could be venally, criminally getting a payment under the table. And then it becomes somewhat nefarious. Should people be in jail when they do that? Either the giver or the taker. The answer to that is yes. But that is by far the smallest part. The biggest part is being confronted by people who have an interest and say, look, if you do this, it's going to hurt me. Almost invariably, there's somebody else who comes in and says, if you do it, it's going to hurt me. And that's what makes for democracy, the interest here and the interest there. And what does the Congress try to do? What do the courts try to do? They try to either compromise or determine which interest ought to prevail, or should there be a melding of the interests so that both interests can both be helped and not hurt. Now that sometimes is not possible. Sometimes you have a conviction, this is right and that's wrong. Very frankly, an honest legislator is not going to be convinced by a lobbyist, not dishonestly, but just in terms of advocacy, that their position is better when the member feels clearly, no, it's not, and it's not. That's a relatively easy decision for a legislator to make. The difficult decisions for a legislator to make is when A sounds compelling and B sounds compelling. And they both seem to have a valid argument. And for the most part, members aren't expert on most issues. There are literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of issues. There's no way a legislator can be expert on all. Now you have committees that hear and become more expert than the average member. But in that instance, that's the toughest decision. Lyndon Johnson had a great quote I like. He said, it is not difficult to do the right thing. It's difficult to know what the right thing is. Often, there's a financial interest, and you understand that advocate A is motivated by this financial interest and advocate B by an opposite financial interest. And you have to try to figure out, hopefully listening to both sides and making up your own decision with the help of staff, experts, and outside witnesses.
How about when you realize that it's a difficult decision, but advocate A is there in your face and explaining it so well, and advocate B can't seem to reach you? doesn't know how to get there, hasn't been able to get their message through. You realize there's a sort of void on the other side and that there's more to it, and maybe they just haven't represented themselves well. And so I think that there's an aspect there about the nuance or the expertise or the value of good lobbying, but also a question about how does our system try to accommodate those imbalances that may happen? Well,
Presumably that's the job of the member, of the representative, of the senator, of the council person, of the mayor, the executive, the governor, the president. I mean, obviously we are elected by the people, not by some special interest. Mm-hmm. And let me say something about special interest. That's used sometimes as a pejorative term. There is nobody in the world that doesn't have a special interest. Mm-hmm. You have a child, you have a special interest. You have a home, you have a special interest. You have a job, you have a special. We all have special interests. But some special interests are motivated for good things, and very frankly, there's some special interests who are not motivated for good things. Good things in the eye of the legislator or the decider. So what you have to do is say, okay, this person has a very able, well-trained, well-paid advocate. This person has done the story and they don't have a well-paid because they can't afford it. But your responsibility, and this may sound Pollyannish for some, is to decide not who has the best advocate, but who has the best story, who has the best interest. And the complication is, of course, most of our decisions in life are not just black and white. We like to think they are. Oh, it's good and bad. And a lot of decisions are, and you know the answer. But there are a lot of decisions that are, as you said, this person has a really good argument. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I agree with it, but it is a good argument. Mm-hmm. And this person, their argument sounds reasonable, but they didn't explain it to me very well. So
makes sense.
That's why it's not easy.
Yeah. What advice would you give to people who are looking to engage government, whether they are corporate or nonprofit? They have their issues, they don't have their own lobbying shop set up, right? But they want to start something and they want to be able to be part of the conversation. What are the kind of characteristics, qualities, behaviors that you have found to be most reflective of a successful effort? Just what would you share in terms of advice?
First of all, know your subject. Be knowledgeable. Secondly, be honest. Don't sugarcoat your story so much that it becomes unreal and that the hearer then will discount it. Thirdly, treat the person you're talking to as okay. And the premise is, if I think I'm okay, and I think you're okay, the probability is you're going to think I'm okay, and I'm going to think you're okay, and we're going to have a good relationship because we'll respect one another and think one another really do want to hear what we have to say, and we'll process it. And if we convince them, it may help us. Either way, lobbying is not different. It may be a lot of money for lobbying, it may be a big firm, but it is trying to convince somebody of something that you need, want, or believe. And if you do it honestly, if you do it sincerely, and you don't get angry because the person disagrees with you, we all understand the advocacy of positions and that it's critical to the operations of democracy. And like anything, because it's done by humans, it's sometimes not done right, sometimes done badly. But that doesn't mean that you throw out the concept of representative government hearing from interest groups about what effect legislation or policies will have on them. Because we want, at the heart of it, the system to work well for everybody.